Umaga was a larger-than-life character, a monster that made an impact on many WWE fans. It's an honor to present to you on the Wrestling Paradise, our new series where you will learn the real-life story of the man behind the Samoan Bulldozer, and it may very well surprise you. In this episode, you will learn, among other things, what Umaga used to eat, for example, what the commentator Jim Ross has to say about his extraordinary abilities, and an amazing detail about the way he played football when he was young, but also which jobs he had before becoming a pro wrestler, how he got to work with his big brother Rikishi in the Indies, and an incredible story that was told by one of his nephews about his superhuman strength. And you will never guess who was Samoan dropped by Umaga while he was still new in the main roster, and how an incident in a bar had big consequences on his career. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, the tragical destiny of the Samoan Bulldozer, Umaga. Here we go! Long before becoming the Samoan Bulldozer, Umaga, whose real name is Edward Fatu, even if his relatives called him Eki, was born on March 28, 1973. He grew up in the American Samoa, and he was not born in just any family. The Samoan dynasty of the Anoa'i. In this family, we can find, hang on to your seat, Afa and Sika, his uncles, who formed the legendary Wild Samoans team in the 80s and the WWE, and who were inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2007. His cousin Yokozuna, another iconic superstar with a sumo character who made a tremendous impact in the 90s, and that Umaga will get a tattoo of on his forearm. His other cousin, The Rock, if you smell what I'm cooking, perhaps the most famous wrestler in the business, and nowadays a successful actor in Hollywood. He even has another cousin, a certain Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, who has been making history for several years in the WWE, and becoming one of the greatest superstars of all time, day after day. Moreover, in this illustrious bloodline, the Usos and Solo Sikoa are his nephews. Learning all of this, we can only say to ourselves, wow, what an amazing family. And yet, that's not all. There are also his two brothers, who are about 8 years older than him. The Tonga Kid, who was in the WWE in the 80s, and Rikishi, who was an incredible character during the Attitude Era, with his dances and the awesome stink face. We can see that by being born into such a lineage, his destiny as a wrestler seemed already written, that he had this business in his blood. Even physically and genetically, he was built for this industry, since as an adult, the one who would later become Umaga was about 6 feet 2 and had a weight of 350 pounds. Jim Ross, the greatest commentator in WWE history, says about the Samoans, "They have thick wrists, they're wide, heavy bone density, and they have thick ankles. They're just put together different, and I say it in all due respect. Their DNA and their genetics are just conducive to combat sports, football, or whatever it may be." Even in terms of nutrition, Eki was a monster, since, according to his charismatic son Zilla, whom we will have the opportunity to talk about again in our series, he often ate 5 boxes of noodles in a salad bowl with eggs and a lot of mayonnaise, which he apparently loved. And for the record, the Usos told that Samoans put mayonnaise everywhere, that it is a bit their guilty pleasure. Zilla is also surprised himself that his father has never been to a big eater competition, because, according to him, he would have won hands down. Anyway, throughout his career, diet has been a serious concern for the Samoan. He himself once said, "The hardest training was really dieting. I can do anything, but when it comes down to dieting, drop some weight, that is the hardest training I ever had." And yet, as you will see, his destiny as a pro wrestler is not necessarily going to be written the way we could have imagined it. Rikishi says that initially, his brother was supposed to become a professional NFL player in the United States, where he wasn't raised, since he grew up on the islands, where he really was a star when he played football in high school. According to his older brother, at that time he was already 230 pounds and 6 feet 2 in his second year. And he also told another funny detail. In high school, Umaga was the only one who played football barefoot, simply because he couldn't run while he was wearing cleats. A funny detail when we know that years later it will become one of his trademarks to wrestle barefoot. It is precisely in high school that he will meet his future wife, with whom he will have 4 children. They lived in the same village on their island, and she says that at first she didn't really like him because apparently he was a bit cocky because he was the best at football and all the girls wanted to go out with him. In the end, they will still get along well and they will have their first child together when they were both 18 years old in 1992. At that time, they lived in the United States and Umaga had several jobs. He has, for example, been a plumber, an electrician. He also worked in construction, but all of this was not enough to feed his family, especially since they will have 3 more children in the following years. The very last, Zilla, was born in 1999. So, to be able to offer his loved ones a better life, he is going to make a major decision. He too is going to become a pro wrestler. And yet, this is something that he didn't want to be at the beginning, especially because he saw the very hard life that his brothers, the Tonga Kid and Rikishi, already had at the same time. Always being on the road, daily trips, and according to his wife, he hated pro wrestling. But finally, he ended up changing his mind. Maybe because at the time they lived in a trailer park in rather difficult conditions. When he will announce to his parents, Solofa Sr. and Vera, that he wants to give pro wrestling a shot, they will tell him, "Oh no, another wrestler? You have too much talent for football. Go play in the NFL instead." But his decision was made. He will be the next superstar of the Anoa'i dynasty. Fortunately, his uncles Afa and Sika, the Wild Samoans, had created their own school, and Umaga will go there to train with his relatives, who are also experienced. A privilege for him, because at the time there were a lot less pro wrestling schools than now. He will be coached by his uncles, by Rikishi and by Yokozuna, who had already been WWE champion and did the main event of WrestleMania. By his side, he will have another cousin, Matt Anoa'i, who also wants to succeed in this business, and who is 3 years older than Umaga, and we will know him better under the name of Rosey, and he is simply Roman Reigns' big brother. It is also worth noting that Matt already appeared in the WWE in 1995 and in 1996, when, with his cousin Samu, they were the Samoan Gangster Party. They didn't have any matches in the federation and just came to watch Fatu a few years before he became Rikishi, at a time when he had the babyface gimmick that came from the ghetto and wanted to set a positive example for young people. The latter also tells about the training with the Wild Samoans. "We all became very close. Uncle Afa and Uncle Sika no longer became Uncle Afa and Uncle Sika. They were like father figures to us." This decision to become a pro wrestler completely changed Umaga's life the following years. So make sure to stay until the end of this episode to discover the rest of his amazing career. After having been able to train well with his family, Umaga was ready to officially start his career, and it is in Japan that he will really start it. He will have his first real official matches there in the Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling Federation in March 1999. There, he will have tag team matches with his cousin Matt, and they will first have the name of Armageddon for their team. A name that they will keep until October, and then between May and July 2000, they will be the Samoans. Umaga will also use his real name, Eddie Fatu. It was in Japan that he won the first title of his career, the Hardcore Tag Team Championship, on June 21st, 2000. Meanwhile, he had also wrestled under the name OG ECMO in July 1999 for Power Pro Wrestling, a federation based in Memphis in the United States. At that moment, he was 26 years old, and it should be noted that on July 17th, he had one of the very rare matches of his career in a team with his big brother Rikishi, who was called J.R. Smooth at that time. In a segment, we could see him alongside his brother, who was doing a promo. He had chains, a bandana, a tank top, a character with a street style. He did the W sign with his hand to represent the West Coast, just like the rappers Tupac and Ice Cube. These years of hardcore training with his relatives and his tag team experiences with his cousin Matt will start to pay off, since he will join Memphis Championship Wrestling, where he will have matches between April and July 2001. And you should note that this federation was serving as a developmental center for the WWE at that time. The American Dragon, who we will later know as Daniel Bryan, even had matches there at that period. So he now has a developmental contract with the WWE. This time they called themselves the Island Boys, and once again it will go pretty well, considering that on June 14th, 2001, they won the Southern Tag Team title against the APA, JBL and Ron Simmons. This adventure at MCW will end sooner than expected, but it's not their fault. WWE had just bought World Championship Wrestling, the big rival company during the Attitude Era, and is ending its collaboration with the Memphis Training Club, to instead do the same thing at the Heartland Wrestling Association, which was the competitor's training school in previous years, and which has the advantage of being in Ohio, not very far from Ohio Valley Wrestling, the most famous developmental center where John Cena, Brock Lesnar, and Randy Orton will be trained, just to name a few. Thanks to this, the HWA television shows will be recorded in the OVW arena with their equipment and their team to save money, which was a smart move. They will stay there from August 2001 until July 2002, with success once again, since they won the tag team title on November 14th, 2001 against Shannon Moore and Ivan Karagias. In a segment from September 2001, we can see Umaga, or rather OG ECMO, with his teammate Kimmo from the Island Boys, being confident, in a very relaxed attitude, sure of himself, playing the cocky guy very well. He didn't stutter despite his inexperience on the microphone. It is mainly Rosey who speaks the most there, but as he himself says, he is the type of guy to let his actions speak for him. We can notice a progress when we look at a segment from March 2002, where this time ECMO, who wears a bandana, talks a lot more, is more energetic and able to be angry if it is needed. In this case, they were in a rivalry with Lance Cade and Steve Bradley, who are going to attack them a few seconds later. He doesn't sound uncomfortable or awkward at all, and we feel that Rosey's presence and all these years where he was trained the hard way by his Samoan ancestors and by other superstars have given him confidence that he is in his element. In a match with Tony B against Val Venus, Steve Bradley and Ray Steele on December 15th, 2001, we see that he obviously didn't have any face paint at the time, that he was wearing black shorts with ECMO written on them, knee pads, boots, elbow pads, bracelets, all black, and a white bandana. It really gives him a gangster look, which goes with his name OG for Original Gangster ECMO. Despite his imposing size, he is able to be very dynamic and put some rhythm into the match, which could sometimes be a weakness of other big guys in general, but it was not his case. He screams during his moves. He is expressive both verbally and in his mannerism to fill the short moments between the moves. It should also be noted that on November 29th, 2001, he had a match at World Extreme Wrestling, the federation of his uncle Afa, and participated in a show which was a tribute to his cousin Yokozuna, who unfortunately passed away in October 2000. A beautiful initiative in which The Undertaker and Kane also participated. In another match at World Extreme Wrestling in 2002 against the Backstage Boys team, it's great to see Ekmo already yelling, already being wild in his acting. Seeing him do a beautiful Samoan drop after having first thrown his opponent in the air. A splash from the top rope. All of this really shows his incredible agility, and these amazing abilities must have caught the attention of the WWE officials during these training years. Clearly, we can feel that he is a natural in the ring, and that he has wrestling in his blood, which is not surprising considering his family. We will also note that he wears a necklace, and that, more generally, between that, his wild side, and his in-ring qualities, we could already see the premises of his future Umaga character. While WWE was firing a lot of talent from the training center to regroup everyone at OVW and no longer collaborate with the HWA, fortunately for him, with Matt, they are going to have several dark matches in the fall of 2001, especially against the Haas brothers. And apparently they had indeed convinced the officials to keep him to soon launch him in the main roster. As Jim Ross was also working behind the scenes of the company at the time, says, "He was always going to be special. You just can't find somebody with his traits and his size, his look. They don't grow in trees. He didn't lay around on the mat and take an hour to get up. He was down and up, down and up. He had great agility and coordination." After several years of training within his legendary family and some experiences in Japan and in the WWE developmental, the young Umaga, at 29 years old, is now ready to make his first impact on Monday Night Raw in the summer of 2002 and really start his pro wrestling career, which, if it was successful, could allow him to really provide for his wife and his 4 children. Is he going to make it? That's what we're going to see very soon. It is July 22nd, 2002. On Monday Night Raw, D'Lo Brown and Sean Stasiak are having a rather random match that doesn't seem to get many people interested, when all of a sudden Eric Bischoff, the general manager, appears on the stage and tells them that they have 3 minutes to entertain him. Time goes by, and suddenly, out of nowhere, Umaga, who at that time was called Jamal and Rosey, appear in the ring and destroy the 2 other wrestlers. At that moment, Umaga's first gimmick in the main roster that you will have all the following months was born. Together with his cousin, there will be the 3-minute warning team. The concept is quite original in my opinion. They are Bischoff's henchmen, who will each time give some people 3 minutes to entertain him, or they will be attacked by them. Even if it's in a tag team, and by the way, we can see that Umaga has always been in a tag team so far in his entire career, it's still a role that enables him to be associated with the general manager of Raw, which is an interesting opportunity to shine, and to be directly involved in the storylines of the show, as we will see, as heels who martyrize everyone. About this first impact of Umaga in the WWE, Jim Ross says, "We saw that he would be a star, without the shadow of a doubt." He even goes so far as to say that he was almost too nice in real life to play a villain. In any case, the following weeks, the 3-minute warning will have several victims. In particular, the future good friend of Umaga, Jeff Hardy. And all of this will lead to a significant segment on SmackDown for the season premiere of The Blue Show on September 12, 2002. While the team of Billy and Chuck had some kind of wedding ceremony set up by their friend Rico Constantino, with also the SmackDown general manager Stephanie McMahon, there is going to be a swerve. The old man who married them is none other than Eric Bischoff. It's a battle between Raw and SmackDown, and Umaga is even going to do a Samoan drop to Vince McMahon's daughter. This segment had an important part in this season premiere, a little more than 20 minutes, and the 3-minute warning clearly made their biggest impact at that moment, I think. After that, Rico, who betrayed Billy and Chuck, is going to be their new manager, and the Samoan will have his first WWE pay-per-view match at Unforgiven on September 22nd, 2002 against them. A real first step in his career, in the middle of a rivalry between Bischoff and Stephanie. We notice in this match that Umaga always had a rather street outfit, which he had since his beginnings in wrestling, with some kind of NFL jersey on which he wrote his name. So the flip side of being launched into a tag team in the middle of this feud between Raw and SmackDown is that it's not easy to shine and really stand out in there. But we can still admire his flexibility and his agility in his way of selling a clothesline, and when he is on the top rope and gets thrown into the ring by Chuck. It is a short match and he's the one who will pin Billy after a beautiful Samoan drop. For the record, at the end of the show, following the defeat of her representatives, Stephanie will be forced by Bischoff to kiss a certain Hildegard, who in reality was Rikishi in disguise, Umaga's brother. Following this, they will have a rivalry with the Dudley Boys and Jeff Hardy, which will lead to what will ultimately be the most important match of Umaga and Rosey's team on November 17th, 2002 at Survivor Series. On that day, they are in the opening match of one of the 4 major pay-per-views of the Federation. And on commentary, Jim Ross announces them as the biggest team in the WWE. They have a real Titantron with their heads, and in this match we can note several memorable and spectacular moments. That moment where, with Rosey, they smash Spike Dudley on a table. That spot of Jeff Hardy who throws himself on Rosey who was on a table. That sequence which is incredible on a symbolic level when we know the matches they will have in a few years, when Umaga jumps on Jeff Hardy on the table outside the ring and eliminates him from the match, which will undoubtedly remain his highlight of this entire period. And finally, the moment when he is eliminated by Bubba Ray Dudley. Moreover, we notice that he is able without problem to often go on the top rope. After these first impactful months in the WWE that were amazing in my eyes, we could really believe that the best was yet to come for him. At the same time, Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer will name Jamal and Rosey the worst team of the year 2002, for what it's worth. But they were still a tag team capable of destroying their targets, in the footsteps of their ancestors Alpha and Sika. Moreover, about this whole beginning of Umaga's tag team career, Jim Ross says that it was something traditional, that there was a desire to recreate the past, to be a bit like the new Wild Samoans. And we can say that it was going pretty well, since JR tells us, "The irony of the 3-minute warning was they started getting over as babyfaces, because people knew that they're going to see some stuff go down." It was also a time when Umaga used to take his son Zilla, who was about 3 years old, into the ring with Rey Mysterio's son Dominic. They would run everywhere there, and years later the two young people are still friends. But unfortunately, things will start getting complicated for Umaga in the fall of 2002. So make sure to stay until the end of this episode to discover which consequences it had on his career. On October 14th, with Rosey, they attacked the veteran Pat Patterson, on whom Umaga did a Samoan drop and a splash. But the veteran will have his shoulder dislocated after this assault, and the Samoan will get into trouble backstage. He will be criticized for being too violent in the ring. Several performers will complain about him, and with his aggressive and wild wrestling, the belief was that he could hurt someone really bad. Looking back at it, Jim Ross was of course a privileged spectator of all of this behind the scenes. Explains that, according to him, the 3-minute warning had this reputation because, in reality, they were almost too motivated to get over. The officials often had to tell them to slow down and protect their opponents, which is the most important thing in pro wrestling. Especially because Umaga is also a force of nature. Since Journey Fatu, his nephew, says, "He was changing a tire early in the morning. I'm walking across to take the garbage out. I see my uncle changing the tire, but the bolt was tripped or stuck, whatever it was. I kid you not, I see this man get frustrated and look at the little crowbar. He just stepped on it and that whole thing popped off. He was strong. Can you only imagine the damage he could do to his opponents if he was also pissed off? In any case, the WWE will punish him for what he did to Pat Patterson by making him get stink-faced by his brother Rikishi during the Royal Rumble in early 2003. A funny punishment, but always better than a fine or a dismissal. Unfortunately, the biggest problem that Umaga will have at that time, while he has barely been on the main roster for a few months, will happen on the evening of November 29th in 2002. He was with his wife in a bar in Pensacola, Florida, and apparently they had an argument with the bouncer. He ended up asking the couple to leave, but when his wife refused, the security guard grabbed her arm, which drove Umaga crazy, who pushed him away and threatened to hit him. The bouncer was apparently an off-duty police officer, and they are going to have a physical altercation. In the end, Umaga had to be taken to the hospital because he had some injuries, and in the ambulance, he apparently threatened the police officers to kill them. After this incident, he was arrested, and after learning about this, the WWE officials were unhappy. So, on the one hand, just like Jim Ross, we might think that if it really had been serious, Umaga would have gone to jail. But on the other hand, it's obviously bad for the image of the company, which has also gone public for only a few years at that time. And unfortunately, the company would no longer want to invest in a guy who they think is not only dangerous in the ring, but who, outside of it, gets himself into trouble. From then on, nothing will be the same for Umaga. He will clearly get buried and have a big depush. For example, with Rosey, they will lose against Kane in the Raw of December 9th, 2002 in not even 3 minutes. And more generally, they will go through several defeats week after week. The 3-minute warning will no longer have any tag team matches on pay-per-view. They will almost only have matches in house shows, not on TV, or at best on Sunday Night Heat, where WWE puts Raw's secondary wrestlers. We will also note that on April 28, 2003, they got destroyed by Goldberg on Raw, and that Umaga even got jackhammered. And all this decline will end in a final defeat on May 26, 2003 against Maven and Tommy Dreamer on Sunday Night Heat. This is Umaga's last match in the Federation before being fired in June. As Jim Ross explains, it was brought up by others in the company. Well, this guy's putting our company in jeopardy, and he's out of control, and he can't control his habits. Vince McMahon would say the only way he knows to fix this problem is let him go and let him mature, because we're sure we have to bring him back. What WWE saw as immaturity at the time will have therefore cost Umaga his spot in the company, but he will not have a bad reaction. As Jim Ross explains, the idea was to let him go so that he matures and comes back with a new mindset. It was more a see you later than a farewell. The commentator told the Samoan that he had to change and control himself, and he also gave him hope. He told him that he could become a tremendous star. Umaga understood his dismissal and was not angry. He was aware of his mistakes. From there, we can say that he will focus on one single goal: to improve himself in order to return as soon as possible to the company where he has always wanted to be. In the next episode, we will see together how Umaga managed to come back to the WWE. You will learn all the backstage secrets behind the creation of one of the biggest monsters of the Ruthless Aggression era, and the captivating story of his powerful run as the Samoan Bulldozer. In any case, we were able to study the early beginnings of the amazing Umaga in the business. A superstar with a very interesting journey that deserves to be a lot more talked about given how rich it is, but unfortunately also tragical. And this gives me the chance to have a great debate with you. In your opinion, do you think the Anoa'i dynasty is the most prestigious family in pro wrestling? We invite you to come and give your opinion. It will be interesting to talk about it together in the comments and to share our points of view. We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?